Hello, welcome to another edition of this series, Freemasonry and Satanism, number 58, part 2, Invisible Residence, by Ivan Sanderson, a respected author in his time. Published back here in 1970. So let's just move on to some more UFO and anomalies cited, and then a continuation review of another UFO investigator report. So this ought to be quite exciting, just contributing to the belief and understanding what's going on out there. Are UFOs real? Aliens real? Abductions real? Hybrid entities? Reptilians real? And if it all is real, and it's been kept from the people of the world, and now in the Georgia USA Guidestones they want to reduce the population to 500 million. They write books about overpopulation. They build underground facilities for somebody's survival in a secret government. What does it all have to do with invisible residents? Does it have anything to do with invisible residents? Personally, I don't see how it could not have something to do with it. I don't buy the philosophy that there's 2 weird things going on Earth, or 3 weird things going on. Whatever's going on is all tied together, in my opinion. So here we go, page 37. Other callers reported that there were hundreds of red and orange lights bobbing in the ocean just south of Golden Gate Park. Investigation here also revealed nothing. In the summer of 1954, the Grote Beer, I guess that's a ship, the Netherlands government ship, arrived in New York with a report that 80 miles out, the crew had seen a strange, flat, moon-like object rise out of the ocean. 80 miles off in New York. That's interesting. Captain Bushhoff was called to the bridge as soon as it was sighted and observed it through binoculars. He stated that at first it was a grayish, but it turned brighter on the lower part. It also had bright spots resembling lights around the edges. Page 38. Observed ball of fire moving in and out of the water without being extinguished. Trailing white smoke moving in erratic course finally disappears. In late 1954, the Navy Hydrographic Office reported that the American tanker Dynafuel, sailing in the Gulf of Mexico, not far from New Orleans, saw smoke on the water. The ship's master said the smoke appeared to come from underwater and resembled smoke from bombs dropped during target practice. In February 1955, Annabelle Curverwell of Arizona was on the beach in Ocean Beach near San Diego. She reported that she saw a huge geyser of water with a rear end of what looked like a spaceship protruding from the top. The geyser subsided, and the place where the geyser disappeared was a ring of what looked like woolly clouds. They did not move, although a strong wind was blowing. On the 2nd of July, 1955, witnesses at Santa Maria, California, reported that a long silvery object emerged from the water. As incredible as all this seems, once we continue with this immense amount of material, it's just hard to believe that everybody's a liar, that this is all false, from all the sources that I've been doing. which is why I've been doing numerous books on the UFO, alien, ancient history theme. It's just contributing to the education and the understanding of what is really out there, no matter what the government says. They want to make people look foolish who talk about it. They want to keep it under wraps. Why? On the 13th of December 1956, a Swedish ship radioed the harbor control at LaGuardia, Venezuela, that a cone-shaped object was falling vertically into the sea off the Venezuelan coast. It was very brilliant and gave off a strange glare. On the 19th of April, 1957, crew members aboard the Kitsugawa Mara, a Japanese fishing boat, spotted two metallic silvery objects descending from the sky into the sea. On the 2nd of June of the same year, 1957, two patrolmen at Rye, New York, watched a large object with two white lights and one red light plunge into Long Island Sound. But to remember that book we reviewed, Night Siege, from 1983 and 84. Huge triangular ships all over Connecticut and upper New York for 2 years. People pulled over en masse on the interstates watching it. Why isn't this taught in school? Why isn't this accepted? And on the 24th of August, the trawler Eros proceeded through the Ahu Passage near Ningo Island in the Bismarck off New Guinea, reported a large yellow star which turned red, then green, then crimson. It hovered about 20 minutes and then turned from crimson back to green and appeared to enter the sea. So it hovered and then it went into the sea. On the 1st of September 1956, police at Port Crawley, Wales, saw a blood-red object with a jagged black streak across its center from the sea, rise from the sea. Sorry about that. It was described as being a good deal larger than a full-size harvest moon and as having headed out toward the Atlantic. So, a blood-red object with a jagged black streak across its center rose from the sea. Wow. Moving on, and as we all know, I just read the highlighted portions here. I don't read the whole book. Go buy the book. If you can't find it in a bookstore, go to the used book sites. $5, $10, and you too can have invisible residence and show your friends. And remember, I have a website, rickmiracle.com, that has a link there to all the books I have read. If you want to go look at them and get on the used book sites and order some of those books really cheap, you too will know a lot of things people don't know. Truth is stranger than fiction. These books I read are documented facts according to the authors in their research. Could some of them have lied? I suppose. Could they have made mistakes? Of course. But would anybody expect all these books to be fabrications? I doubt it. Hardly seems possible. Because I look up, that's what I do. I investigate the investigators. I investigate the authors. 10 years worth of work here. You can watch these videos in an hour, hour and a half, and in a couple weeks, a month, get 10 years worth of education. On March of 1959, on the coast of Poland, near Kolobers, Polish soldiers saw the sea suddenly become agitated, A triangular object, each side measuring about 4 meters, so that would be 12 feet, thereabouts, came out of the water, started to fly in circles over the barracks, and then sped away and vanished. Bailey's Beach, Long Island, the 29th of April 1961, a contractor working on the beach saw what he at first thought was the head of a red-faced man out for a swim. The spherical object bobbed on the waves 200 yards from shore, drifted out to sea, but it suddenly rose to 60 feet above the water and took off in a straight line out to sea at an estimated 100 miles an hour. Continuing on. The 18th of September 1961, 4th Officer Glendale of the vessel Queensland Star in the Indian Ocean reported sighting a UFO through a cloud formation. Strangely enough, I had a dream last night, and I was in a city, on a city block with big buildings, and I looked up and this gigantic craft was coming down like it was going to crash. And I was with somebody else in the dream, and we started running up the block, wondering if we were running in the right direction to get away from the crash. I mean, it was huge, you know, many city blocks, huge, big. That was my dream. Think these books are doing it? Anyways, white in color, it vanished into the clouds and then reappeared, dropping toward the sea. The object apparently entered the sea as the water in the surrounding area grew intensely bright where the object had fallen. Particles of white matter continued to fall into the sea. After the object had disappeared, and the sky and the water in the immediate vicinity were illuminated for several minutes. According to the Honolulu Advertiser newspaper of the 13th of March in 1963, residents of Windward, Hawaii, one of the islands, observed a light in the sky north of the island about 6 p.m. yesterday. One resident said it was very bright, appeared to descend slowly into the sea in a series of movements. It was reddish and was visible for 5 or 6 seconds. That island is called Oahu. I don't even want to try to say it. Alright, page 42. The Seaside, Oregon signal on the 12th of January 1965 noted that Mrs. Paul Zimmerman Gearhart and her 2 sons saw a triangular unidentified aerial object, UAO, which came slowly out of the southeast and then suddenly plunged into the sea some miles offshore at Tillamook Head. It left 2 trails of fire behind. On the 29th of January, Monterey, California, Mayor George Clemens and his family spotted a very bright light performing aerobatics in the northern sky. It hovered for a while, then shot straight up, high speed for about 500 feet, then faded and dropped down and hovered again. Then it dropped further down into the water and disappeared. Seems like some of these UFO, unidentified aerial objects, sometimes seem to have some malfunctioning issues of their ship as they try to speed off and then hover and then try to speed off and then descend into the sea or the ocean. England again on the 15th of February 1965, where a ghost plane crashed in the Bristol Channel 1 mile offshore at Minehead. This unusual aircraft was apparently seen by many people before it reached the channel. it was said that there was something abnormal about it. It did not seem to be distinct, but it had a misty appearance about it. There was no mist or fog about. One witness stated that it came from behind some trees and disappeared before our eyes. Page 44. On the 4th of August, 1967, Dr. Hugo Sierra Yepes was fishing in the Gulf north of Arrecliff, Venezuela, when he felt a vibration and the sea began to boil in big bubbles. In a circle about 6 meters in diameter, a gray-blue flat globe emerged. That'd be kind of weird. You're sitting here in a boat and a big globe emerges. Hovered close to the surface, dripped water, ascended in a curve, and then shot upward into space in 1967. Does that say that there's something on this earth other than we humans? Something that's living in the seas and the ocean? Or is this guy lying? Is everybody lying in all these books I do? Again, I rather doubt it. The craft was described as having a revolving section with triangular windows. Go watch Battlestar Galactica and Star Trek. Notice that their symbols, their badges, are all sort of usually triangular. What's with that? Pay attention to them. Battlestar Galactica, it's got the rising sun almost in there. Very definitely, seemingly, witchcraft occultic symbols. At Caitia, La Venezuela, on the 25th of August, one Ruben Narato. My eyes are seeing one thing and my mouth is saying something else. Reading from books is not easy. Try it. Was on the beach when he saw precipitous movement of the water. Precipitous. Then 3 huge plate-shaped discs appeared out of the water and streaked out of sight. So there you go. You're on the beach, and 3 huge plate-shaped discs appeared out of the water and streaked out of sight. And during the first week of May 1968, 5 UAOs, unidentified aerial objects, which was the name that they used before they came up with UFOs, unidentified flying objects, were observed diving into the ocean off the coast of Arrecliff, Venezuela, Snug Harbor, Nova Scotia, on the 4th of October 1967. He described the lights as 4 lights in a row which went off and on in order, tilted from level to 45 degrees angle, and disappeared slowly into the water. Ron O'Brien of the Burlington Detachment of the RCMP and 2 other officers saw the light floating on the water for about half a mile offshore. And again, like I said, I'm just skipping from highlighted part to highlighted part just to get the gist of this little discussion. A very large patch of bubbling water and foam was reported by the observers. One fisherman described the froth as 80 feet wide and yellowish in color and said that he had never seen anything like it before in the area. Canada's Coast Guard Service. Had enough? Well, hang on to your metaphorical hats because there is much worse to come, says Ivan Sanderson here. The above sampling is merely a sampling of one aspect of this subject, to wit, unidentified things going into or coming out of the sea. And as I would ask you to note, the high percentage of these were emanated from what can only be called official sources, such as the Coast Guard and the police. There is a world of difference between some funny light said to have been observed in the sky and manifestly solid objects going into and coming out of the seas and oceans, and lakes and rivers, and as we shall see in a moment, these things are altogether more concrete in a general meaning of that word. So the fourth chapter here is a fourth mystery, inshore UAOs. With that, I'll move on to my other document for a little while, which should be a fascinating read. These are actual documents that were quarterly reports by the UFO investigator. This is August, September 1962. I think they did them this is every 2 months, so this is August and September. And you'll be amazed what's in this report. All right, here we go. I'm going to try to do this a little thorough because I think it's very important. Remember, President Kennedy was killed in 1963, and this is 1962. So let's see what was happening in the UFO world with the government a year earlier before his death. Specifically, let's go with this article starting out. The UFO evidence, a preview for Congress, outlining NICAP's forthcoming report on its 5-year investigation of unidentified flying objects. The forthcoming report. We went over this in one of my previous 1964, it says on the bottom there. The NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon. This was the 5-year report that they sent to every congressman and every representative, all the government officials. What is that, about 180 pages? I think 183 pages. But we did that in a previous video, went through that. So here we go. Pending completion of the 5-year report, this special issue is being sent to all members of Congress with letters citing 3 points. Because of the increasing dangers of the UFO situation, we ask your serious consideration on these facts. The National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomenon possesses and will submit to Congress documented expert evidence of UFO reality, some of it duplicated by the Air Force intelligence reports, which most of the NICAP's military and technical advisors believe indisputable. Number 1, cases of injuries to airline passengers caused by pilots' hasty maneuvers when collisions with UFOs seemed imminent. Number 2, Air Force cases in which pilots disappeared or were killed while trying to intercept UFOs. Number 3, a report to intelligence by an Air Force transport pilot indicating his plane was fired at by a UFO, and other pilots' reports of dangerously close approaches. Number 4, hundreds of other verified unsolved UFO reports by Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and airline pilots, control tower operators, rocket experts, astronomers, scientists, and other trained observers and competent citizens. Number 5, evidence that the Strategic Air Command has launched bombers. That would be SAC headquarters where they have all the nuclear missiles. The Strategic Air Command had launched bombers because the flying objects in seemingly formation, which never have been identified, UFOs first evaluated as possible Soviet attack. So they were concerned back in 1962. Congressional statements. And I hold it like that so you can pause and go back and you can sit there and see it for yourself. I don't want you to believe a darn thing I say. You need to do your homework and double check my facts. Senator Thomas Dodd identified flying objects never have been accurately explained. Hearings would be helpful to clarify for the people the real facts concerning flying saucers. Well, that's nice. They want to clarify for the people. Well, they had this one town in the news recently that had voted 75% to not have cameras at the red lights. And now the town fathers are actually going to sue the citizens for voting for the fact that they don't want cameras at the red lights. So there's a far cry from the previous police cars that used to say, "We protect and serve," to the now police forces with the SS Gestapo stormtrooper gears, and the way that the politicians used to think about clarifying for the people, and now they could give no concern at all for the people, but be building FEMA camps and taking away people's property rights and all kinds of other issues. Again, what's going on? What's it got to do with UFOs, aliens, and the New World Order and New Age, United Nations, all the wars and craziness in the Middle East? I am very confident it is all connected, which is why I mention it here on this video. There are plenty of books talking about Nibiru and Anunnakis and the return of an Antichrist, and even the Pope is saying strange things. What's it got to do with UFOs? Are UFOs real? If UFO and aliens are real, and there is some sinister or alien society, how do I call it, living in underground cities in our oceans, visitors, entities, residents, we should probably consider that in our thinking process. Senator Kenneth Keating, I do feel that more information should be available to the public. There you go, and he's worried about the public, but they don't worry about the public now. 911, Sandy Hook school shooting, inside jobs. We don't get the truth. But cheat on your taxes for $100 and they'll come and get you. It's crazy. And would favor, of course, some senatorial hearings on the UFO problems. He admits there's problems with UFOs. Senator William Proxmire, the very fact that so many inexplicable incidents have occurred is reason enough for a thorough investigation. You think? That's what Kennedy wanted to do, and days later he was dead. Senate Majority Leader John McCormack, to the director of NICAP, my Senate committee held executive sessions on the matter of unidentified flying objects. We could not get much information at that time, although it was pretty well established by some in our minds that there were some objects flying around in space that were unexplainable. You think? Statement authorized by Congressman McCormack. An interview with Berkeley Griffin, Washington correspondent. I feel that the Air Force has not given out all it has on the UFOs. These UFOs, the ones not satisfactorily explained, must be in a very high state of development. Whether they come from some other planet, we don't know. Many expert witnesses have seen these objects. You can't rule out all these sightings as imagination, a mistaken identity, atmospheric phenomenon. Congressman James Corman, where UFOs have endangered passengers on airplanes or otherwise imperil our national security, we should all take steps necessary to determine the nature of the objects and their sources. Congressman Edgar Hindstand to Dudley Sharp, the then Secretary of the Air Force, there seems to be enough evidence that UFOs are real. Therefore, what harm could complete frankness do? other congressional statements in Section 12. All right, let's get on to this here. New sightings by Navy, FAA, and airline observers. Dutch jet pilot tries to down UFO. August 2nd, I suppose 1962, about 8:30 to 8:45 p.m., two separate unidentified objects flying at high speed were sighted over Kansas and Oklahoma by Captain Jack Metzer, a Central Airlines pilot, and other witnesses. Immediately, investigations were started by NORAD, North American Air Defense Command, and ATEC, Aerospace Technical Intelligence Command. Shortly before Captain Metzger's first sighting, between Wichita and Liberal, Kansas, a county civil defense director relayed several UFO reports to Central Airlines agent Fred Jones at Liberal Airport. A few minutes later, Captain Metzer radioed the airport that he had just seen a brilliant flying object traveling swiftly east to west after hovering for a fraction of a second. Well, we know meteorites don't hover. A few moments after the radio report, Agent Jones, looking out from the airport station, saw an extremely bright UFO over the field. Its dazzling glow lit up the runway. A dozen passengers waiting outside saw three other strange objects flying above the airport. Well, this is a lot of visitation here, isn't it? Approximately 30 minutes later, after landing and taking off at Guymon, Oklahoma, Captain Metzard saw his second UFO. It was flying at an altitude higher than his airliner. These two objects were not meteorites. He reported they were flying faster than anything I've ever seen. The sighting reports brought quick Air Force phone calls, Agent Jones stated. He said he was queried by a colonel at the ATIC in Dayton and by a lieutenant colonel at NORAD headquarters in Colorado Springs. No information has been released by the Air Force. Amsterdam, Holland. The following Dutch Air Force report has been confirmed by NICAP member Air Force Van Worrington, veteran UFO investigator in the Netherlands, however you say his name. On January 29, 1962, a Royal Dutch Air Force pilot flying an F-86 Sabre jet sighted an unknown flying object over eastern Holland. The jet's radar also picked up the object, so he saw the object on his jet radar. When the pilot radioed his base, he was informed that the UFO was being tracked by control tower radar. Following instructions, he tried to make radio contact with the unknown machine. When his urgent warning continued, page 2 here, continued to go unanswered, he prepared to attack. The F-86 was equipped with 4 20mm cannon and a Sidewinder rocket. Arming the rocket, the pilot tried to close in, but the UFO swiftly pulled away before he could fire. Within a few seconds, it disappeared. U.S. Navy Auxiliary Air Station, New Liberia, Louisiana, July 10, 1962. Excerpts from a report sent to NICAP. At 7:10 a.m. in the morning, a group of S-2F trackers were making touch-and-go landings. Suddenly, a disc-shaped object came in very fast and low, slowed over the runway and hangar, then went out of sight while climbing at a 20 to 30 degree angle. Only unusual feature, aside from the fact that it was a non-conventional aircraft, was a rotating dome on the top of that appeared to be equally divided into two sections, one half light gray in color, the other half black. Estimated speed of the rotation about 90 rotations per minute. The main section did not appear to rotate. I wonder if that was the propulsion system. The two S2Fs were sent after the object, which accelerated rapidly and was soon out of sight. So when they went after the object, it sped up away. Columbus, Georgia, June 23rd, a Federal Aviation Agency control tower operator confirmed numerous reports of three unidentified flying objects which flew over the area. The FAA tower operator B.W. Palmer said the flying objects appeared self-luminous. This is a very common thing here, giving off a red-orange glow as they maneuvered. The same night, two UFOs were sighted over Bradenton, Florida. Though through night binoculars, they appeared to have rotating red, white, and green lights. So that was the front cover and a continuation of one article. So we're going to go over more of this magazine. All right, some of these articles, I'm not going to read the whole thing, because I think just briefly explaining it will give you the gist of the story, such as this one. Air Force Colonel, noted astronomer, joined board. Dr. Charles P. Oliver, president of the American Meteor Society, has joined the NICAP Board of Governors with the expressed hope that he will encourage more UFO observers to report and help dispel the official secrecy. But I will put it up here, hold it for a minute, should you want to read it. So some very credible people joined NICAP, National Investigation Committee. All right, the UFO evidence. A private non-profit organization, NICAP, has for 5 years carefully evaluated the UFO evidence. And as we saw before, this picture here came right out of the Air Force manual instructing its military personnel how to react in the event of a sighting of a UFO in a plane or whatever. Again, you can pause it and read it yourself. The UFO evidence. The Air Force rejected the officers' offers and refused to discuss NICAP's evidence. So the Air Force didn't want to talk to NICAP, where people from all over the world and military personnel and other professionals were sending reports. And the very impressive board of people that joined NICAP on the board of directors. It's got a whole page here of all that on the rear of this document. And instead, it stipulated that each of the NICAP reports would have to be transferred to official forms, and examination would exclude NICAP. So they didn't want to talk to anybody, but fill out our form, and we'll talk about it within ourselves, and we will not talk about it with you. What is going on? The committee would have no chance to discuss, even privately, the serious issues involved. It would take months and costly duplication of hundreds of reports to submit all of the NICAP's evidence in the format that the Air Force wanted on their little form cards. Section 1, typical reports. A report confirmed by former Navy Secretary Don Kimball Navy planes carrying Kimball and Admiral Radford between Guam and Hawaii were circled by two high-speed flying discs. So you got you here a Navy secretary, that's pretty high up, and an Admiral Radford confirmed that their plane from Guam to Hawaii was circled by two high-flying discs. Confirmed to NICAP director by Mr. Kimball and Admiral Calvin Bolster, Naval Research Chief who investigated. Air Force intelligence report during a 1958 night flight over the Pacific, Air Force transport radar picked up a nearby UFO. So an Air Force transport radar picked up a nearby UFO. Strange blue-green burst startled pilot and crew. Pilot fired a challenging rocket. UFO responded with red flares. Other burst. No damage, but the captain believed the UFO hostile, as shown in the intelligence report. And it's got a little report here. General of the entire crew, captain, it's blanked out, appears to be the only individual possessing a personal impression that he was possibly shot at. And he retains this conviction. It's hard to read because it's very small print here, so pardon me. He retains the conviction despite the fact that all previous AAA bursts he had seen were reddish and orange, while this sighting involved a blue-green light. The entire crew, captain, it's blanked out, included, however, is aware of the incident in which multi-engine U.S. Air Force transports have disappeared while flying between here and there. It's blanked out. The rest of the crew appears to have drawn the tentative conclusion that their experience may be related to previous disappearances. Federal Aviation report to NICAP, logs signed by L.E. Davis, Chief Air Traffic Communications Statement, Redmond, Oregon, and statement by FFA Flight Specialist Laverne Warts. On September 24, 1959, a strange, round, glowing object swiftly descended, hovered at 300 feet, moved rapidly nearer the airport, observed with binoculars by Warts, Davis, and FAA men. UFO had intensity of 24-inch arc light, emitted long rays of red, yellow, blue, green lights or fire. 6 F-102 jets were scrambled at Portland, confirmed by the Air Force. As jets appeared, yellow-red flame exhausted beneath the UFO. So beneath the UFO was a yellow-red flame. Wart stated it took off vertically as the interceptors neared. Very maneuverable and controlled. Radar tracked it to 52,000 feet as it eluded the jets. And they have a picture here. And that little paragraph I just read. So these were reports going on, and you can understand why Congress was worried. Probably the President of the United States. You see a bunch of UFOs coming over the North Pole, you might think they were Russian bombers with nukes. Report relayed to NICAP by Admiral Farney, former Navy missile chief. Now these are some credible people in this report. And Captain J.O. Taylor, USN retired, United States Navy. A Navy transport over the Atlantic was approached head-on by a flying saucer disc 300 to 400 feet in diameter. Now consider this, 1962. You got flying saucer disc 300 to 400 feet in diameter. Can we agree that they are here? And if we go to Ivan's book, Invisible Residence, and other books that I have gone over before, and other books that I will go over again, can we also agree that it's likely they've been here before in our history, as described by Mayans and Hopi Indians and Egyptian hieroglyphics, albeit maybe called the Anunnaki, reptilians that mated with humans and had some kind of hybrid creatures? So if this is true, they have been here, they are here, and it is intertwined in our religious texts and the ancient histories of people all over the world. The Peruvians, the big gigantic lines in the desert that can only be seen from the sky. Baalbek over there, Lebanon, north of Israel, where they have stones the size of semi-tractor trailer trucks and small buildings that you can't fabricate or do today. Easter Island, all those statues. Underground facilities in Ecuador from the top of the Andes with caves like cities that go on a nice smooth plain all the way down to the Pacific Ocean, which apparently is where during the last cataclysmic event in the world around the Great Flood area, I believe, these beings wanted to preserve some humans, probably for slaves and workers, so that they wouldn't all get killed during the flood, escorted the Hopis and Ecuadorians and Peruvians and people from other parts of the world into underground shelters. And in the Bible, we have Noah's Ark. So again, my point is, what does that have to do with today? With the preparation seemingly by the government, with the police getting Gestapo-type uniforms and badges and guns and hollow point bullets. Insanity. I get a little emotional because people are just seemingly asleep. They watch movies like Hunger Games and Divergent and all kinds of other seemingly prophetic, prophesized, New Age, biblical, get the mark of the beast enslavement type world, and they don't see it. They act like it's what they're seeing right in front of their face isn't there. It's disturbing. We see it in our streets, the riots, the moving away from jobs. It seems like the government right now is adverse to the people, and the people's enemy appears to be the government. And then they would have us hate Arabs, or hate Mexican immigrants, or hate black people, or hate white people, or hate gay people, or hate Christians. They're good at their propaganda, whoever these people are. And are they the people that are in cahoots with these aliens? That have been operating behind the scenes, seemingly since the beginning of time? Is that probable? Is that possible? It seems likely. Back to the article. Near collision, TWA airliner and high-speed UFO near Amarillo, Texas, July 23, 1957. Several passengers injured when Captain G.W. Schmemmel was forced to dive under the object. Some of these names I get wrong, and I don't try to repeat them. FAA unable to identify. Statement by White Sands Missile Safety Chief Nathan Wagner. I don't wish to start a scare, but this could be connected with the outer space operations. Signed report by Major Ewing Dramone, U.S. Air Force, retired former command pilot and intelligence officer. Again, another credible person, you think? Simultaneously radar tracking of a UFO at over 9,000 miles an hour by U.S. Air Force and Royal Canadian Air Force experts at Goose Air Force Base, Labrador. Foreign report, one of hundreds proving global activity by Captain Gordon Pennington and First Officer G.P. Murphy, Irish International Airlines, on May 21, 1962. A strange machine flew under their four-wing Viscount. Captain Pennington, former RAF pilot, said that it was round with antennas like protrusions. Its speed about 600 knots. Because it might endanger traffic, he radioed British Airway Control. The RAF and the Air Ministry are investigating. So yet again I ask, are they here? Have they been here all along? Are all these people lying in these reports? By the way, you can go on the internet, and my favorite place, I shouldn't tell you, but you'll be buying up the reports that I want. Just plug in the UFO investigator at abebooks.com, UFO book sites. These were $40 and something like that. There were many of these 8-page reports for $100, $200 or more. I can't afford that. Section 2, Intelligent Control. Numerous cases show precise maneuvers and formations, V's, echelons, squares, etc. Air Force intelligence report outmaneuvering 2 F-94 jets by a UFO over Hampstead, Long Island. One pilot who almost blacked out in tight U-turns told intelligence, "The object was controlled by something having visual contact with us. The power and acceleration were beyond the capability of any known U.S. aircraft. Wing intelligence, believed based on reliable, verifiable observations. Air Force intelligence report, jet chased of a UFO with rotating lights by Air Force Wing Commander Colonel D.J. Blake C. tried to close, once with lights off, each time the UFO outraced his jet." U.S. Marine Corps report. Encounter by Captain Don Holland, jet pilot with flying disc over Florida. Missile range. When Holland tried to train his gun camera, the UFO outmaneuvered jet, disappeared in a vertical climb, confirmed by Major General Manley, United States Marine Corps. I don't think we want to call the Mr. General Manley, United States Marine Corps, a liar. The Air Force confirmed airline report by Captain W.B. Nash, First Officer W.H. Foranberry, Pan American Airways, both wartime Navy pilots, near Newport News, Virginia, 6 red glowing discs, later computed 100 feet in diameter, made a high-speed approach below the PAA Airlines. As shown in diagram, then sharply changed course, first flipping on edge, then back to level. The 2 discs flew under the airline, joined the line formation, which disappeared at computed speed of 12,000 miles an hour. Disc formation also cited by ground observers, including Navy Lieutenant Commander, Air Force official. Conclusion: unknown objects that don't exist that they see, and these are the descriptions, but they don't exist. Just like the conspiracy theory of the New World doesn't exist. Just like the inside job on 911 doesn't exist. Even though Israeli people have been on TV and bragged about that that Israel was responsible for it, but even though they admit it, the main mass media doesn't pick it up and talk about it. Israelis were arrested on 911. In one case, partying on a building in New Jersey, videoing the event. How did they know it was going to happen? In other cases, Israeli, espionage agents were apprehended in white vans with bombing materials seemingly inside, according to news reports, were arrested, immediately released, sent back to Israel, went on TV, and bragged about their experience, what they did. In the meantime, we have all these UFO alien sightings. You think there's any relation? I think there is. I think there's a reformation of the planet Earth, And for these people who control it, like the ancient pharaohs or Caesars or whatever, freedom isn't working out for these people, and they're worried about losing their powerful positions of controlling the masses and the races, and murdering and mayhem and all kinds of other satanic, occultic, Kabbalah type activities. Too numerous to mention right here, but in my other videos on this series, Freemasonry and Satanism, I've gone over it and over it and over it. So I would say that these UFOs, the creatures that are in them, hybrids or whatever, aliens, I don't know, they might be ant-like creatures. But certainly the powerful people who run our world know about them, probably are in cahoots with them. And there's 6-7 billion people on the planet, and they're a little worried about losing their control and power. And if we all found out what these people had done, they probably would lose their control and power. Air Force Intelligence Report. B-29 bomber encountered with blue-lighted UFOs in V formation 1,600 feet over Santa Ana, California. As the B-29 swerved, the UFOs abruptly slowed down, some overshooting, regaining formation, then swiftly climbed up out of sight. So they avoided the B-29. Reported by Captain Willis Sperry, American Airlines, after takeoff at Washington Airport, Sperry, his co-pilot and engineer, observed a large rocket-shaped machine racing along the airway toward their DC-9 airliner. So you got a DC-9 airliner racing towards your aircraft, a rocket-shaped thing. Seen clearly in bright moonlight, the UFO momentarily stopped dead. You got a rocket that stops dead. Then swiftly circled the DC-6 and raced toward the Atlantic at supersonic speed. Is this not concerning? What is the reality we live in? Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska. On September 8, 1958, a large rocket-shaped UFO was sighted by Strategic Air Command officers, tower operators, missile personnel. Small objects circled the rocket, disappeared, apparently taken aboard. So that rocket that stalled, did some smaller rockets go aboard it? UFO tilted up, climbed up out of sight. Report by Major Paul Dunch, a witness. Similar reports from many other pilots, often fully confirmed by radar operators. All right, a few more bits and pieces of this 8 pages. I'm on page 3 on the bottom. As disclosed by Major General John Samford, former Director of Air Force Intelligence, hundreds of Air Force pilots have vainly attempted to intercept UFOs. Many other UFOs have been reported by Air Force tower operators. Examples: Air Force Intelligence Report Form 112, a chase by a Far East Air Force F-86 jet. Pilot's radar automatically guiding the jet to the UFO was suddenly jammed. So the UFOs can suddenly jam the pilot's radar. Interestingly enough, in the news today was one article after another that was a little concerning. They were talking about North Korea and Iran possibly parking ships off the coast of the United States and sending up nukes into the atmosphere to explode to cause an electromagnetic wave to destroy all the electronics. I'm sure many people have heard this. They were talking about Newt Gingrich was talking about how Iran was a big threat to the United States. And then North Korea. And seemingly several articles in a row about how Iran was the biggest threat to the world. So the more of this propaganda seems to be coming out. And I suppose they want to attack Iran. All this is part of the Syrian, Iraq, Afghanistan, North Africa, Central Africa, all the other countries, Tunisia, Yemen, which they say is also under siege right now, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all this stuff. All the places where apparently the Anunnaki and all the archaeologists all over the world are digs and their discoveries are put in the mainstream press news, seemingly to confirm or alter the religious historical point of view in the world. So what I'm trying to say is the propaganda and the preparations are seemingly moving forward in great lengths towards the New World Order, despite even the awakening of people. You cannot believe what you read. Moving on to this, pilot switched frequency. UFO interference switched also. But the jet's radar held course. As pilot tried to close, he saw a large, round, flying object bigger than a B-29. Alright, so that was... the UFO escaped by moving up and away from 1,500 to 1,800 knots, verifying information on file with the DI office, Investigators Squadron, Wing and Division Intelligence. As reported on 6 UFOs speeding over Long Beach, California, Major Baker, 1 Air Force witness. They were circular, shiny like spun aluminum. They changed course instantaneously. Air Force report by Edward Wilford, U.S. Air Force former instructor with 2,700 hours in jets. Again, a very credible character. Near Laredo Air Force Base, Texas, Wilford sighted a rocket-type UFO. It headed for his jets, estimated at 1,200 knots, then turned sharply and climbed away. Who's going to call these kinds of people liars? Not me. Air Force intelligence report, sighting by tower operators, Hanande Air Force Base, of a flying object with bright light. As it neared the tower, they saw a dark round shape behind the light. Intercept attempt failed. Air Force report by Major Leet, B-29 commander, on a UFO 250 feet in diameter, flying at high speed over Japan. Air Force report by Colonel Richard Hedrick, U.S. Air Force, on 2 UFOs over Dayton. I presume they are interplanetary. Air Force intelligence report on a flying object that closely buzzed an F-51 on a night flight at Laredo Air Force Base. Seeing the UFO turn as if for another attack, the pilot cut off his lights and hastily landed. Air Force report of a UFO seen maneuvering over Brooklyn Air Force Base. Major James Zitterall, spokesman, evidence shows the object was definitely under control. As reported, disclosed by the ex-Air Force Captain Charles Tracy, former Assistant Wing Operations Division officer, Larson Air Force Base, encountered by Lawson pilot with a flying disc twice the size of his F-51. The UFO closed head-on, dived underneath, just missing the propeller. After repeated passes, the UFO shot over the F-51, dangerously close to the canopy. According to Tracy, the report is in secret Air Force headquarters files. Air Force report on Captain Thomas Mantell killed in a UFO chase. Suggested answers disapproved, still unexplained. Air Force report on UFO chase in B-29 near MacDill Air Force Base. The pilot, an Air Force colonel, said he saw strange objects reverse course as he tried to close. Other Air Force cases with special angles in later sections. So what I'll do now here is I'll just show you some other things and hold it and pause it on each one if you want to pause your computer and read them. But Section 5 is the Army, Navy, and Marines sightings. And more here. And Section 5, Aviation Expert Reports. Airline sightings detailed in full report. Examples: American Captain Raymond Ryan flying a Corvair with passengers was directed by Griffiths Air Force Base to follow and report on a UFO to help guide interceptors. So he's got passengers on board his passenger jet, and ground control wants him to chase after the UFO. That's smart. Captain Richard Case report on a strange object flying over Indianapolis, seen by other airline and Air Force pilots, airport towermen, police, thousands of citizens. Captain Chase, it was a controlled craft, 3 times faster than our Corvair. It made a sharp turn towards us, then flew off across the city. Section 5, Scientists and Engineers. Air Force Intelligence Report, a rocket-shaped craft, strange, terrifically fast, cited by J.J. Kowalski and other Navy cosmic ray project scientists. I guess you can believe those people. Air Force, it is significant that these very experienced, reliable sources observed an object which they were entirely unfamiliar. Colonel Henry J. Carlock, U.S. Air Force Reserve, head of the Physics Department, Mississippi College, sighting via a 100-power telescope on a UFO with lighted ports. 4 Rocketdyne engineers, a large oval-shaped craft, and 2 accompanying discs seen in a level flight, then climbed steep at about 5,000 miles an hour. U.S. Intelligence Report sighting of 7 flying discs. So what we don't know. Section 4, Officers and Citizens. Section 8, Radar and Special Evidence. Just more evidence and more evidence after evidence. Again, I hold it like that so you can pause if you want to read it. Foreign reports, censorship evidence. It's just endless. Censorship. That's page 5. So these 8 pages of reports were really powerful reports. And today people laugh if you talk about UFOs. They go about their business while machine helicopters and jets are bombing and murdering Iraqis and other Arabs in the Middle East. Millions a year are being just annihilated. Why? And does anybody think, like they did in Germany, well, first they came after them, then they came after me? Do the people of the United States actually believe we're not next? It seems like they're preparing that we're next. Anybody with any common sense who pays attention? Section 11, the UFO chronology. Section 12, Congress and UFOs. All right, Section 13, the problem and dangers. The UFO problem resolves into two vital questions. Has the Air Force kept UFO facts from Congress and the public? And if they did, why? Who controls the Air Force? Who controls America? Israel's Prime Minister Sharon said in a heated argument in his Israeli Congress, don't worry about the USA. We control the USA. So who controls? If they control the United States and they control our military, and our military is doing all the fighting for Israel to take over all the nations over there and kill off all the people, does Israel plan on having a big nation the size of the United States of America by combining all those nations? And don't take my word for this. Go on Zionism and Images and you'll see the maps of what they're planning to do. Go look in the video, Wesley Clark, General Wesley Clark. He'll tell you that in the Pentagon he was told that all those wars and all that chaos and mayhem and murder was planned. The European Union was planned in secret. Those states and the financial distress they went through forced them into those positions. They needed the money, and this was all interior controlled who fabricated all that financial destruction. Radar dimples fail to solve key UFO case. Global UFO activity patterns. Air Force stops UFO report broadcast. So in 1962, a year before Kennedy gets killed, this was going on. It was a serious concern. You got new board members. As stated on page 2, we have 2 new board members. This is the editorial section for this magazine. One to replace Vice Admiral R.H. Hellencotter, whose aid in the last 5 years has been invaluable. In 1957, Admiral Hellencotter voted with the board majority to submit an 8-point offer of cooperation to the Air Force. He also signed a joint board letter to the Air Force Chief of Staff urging release of all UFO cases listed as solved. In 1958, he approved a joint public statement that the Air Force was withholding UFO information. In 1960, in interviews with the United Press and Berkeley Griffin, Washington correspondent, he stated that the UFOs are intelligently controlled objects and urged a congressional investigation. In signing a 1961 joint board statement, he again urged hearings, stressing the increasing danger of accidental war from mistaken UFO operations for a Soviet surprise attack. NICAP is grateful for Admiral Hellencotter for his forthright support. When the 5-year report is completed, a copy will be submitted to him for any additional opinions and advice. And as I say, we already went over this in one of my previous book review videos. There's more I could have read here in detail, but I think you get the point. We'll continue on with Invisible Residents, where we left off there. A 4th mystery on inshore UFOs. We'll start out there. I'm trying to just make a point before I move on to my next book review. The reality of UFOs and the activity and the threat felt by the government. Probably they've had meetings, they've made decisions, treaties. So what have the UFOs, the aliens, convinced the United States and the world leaders, the United Nations, that there are too many people on this planet for supportability, sustainability, survivability? Could it be that these aliens and UFOs want to come here and move on this planet with us and grow their own nations, and there's just too many humans? We know that Israel is growing a nation. All the Arab states are being taken over. Even the Ukraine now has a puppet president. So all this internal chaos and anarchy is going on. How do the UFOs and the aliens play into this? Do they play into it? How come in the Anunnaki, in the ancient text in the Middle East on the tablet, Zachariah Stitchin's, that Boule book we did on serpents and dragons, reptilians and shapeshifters described in many YouTube videos and books and websites? What's going on? That's what we're trying to find out. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.